Now, breaking news from KARE 11.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. As we come on the air, we bring you news of the arrest and apprehension of shooting suspect Vance Belter, the man who had been the focus of a manhunt for hours today in the area of Green Isle near a home that he owned. We can report that he has been apprehended, and as you can see from this picture that was just put out on social media by Sheriff Bob Fletcher, they obviously apprehended him alive in that area that they had been searching since early this morning around 7 a.m. And we understand that he was arrested today in a field.
And so we have a lot of new details about this arrest that happened just within the last hour. We also have new details from the crimes themselves because the Hennepin County Attorney has already written a criminal complaint, and he will be charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder as soon as he is able to be brought into custody.
So welcome news, obviously, for everyone in that Green Isle neighborhood. They had been on edge last night knowing that he owned property in that area and that he was clearly an armed and dangerous man. Also, we know it is welcome news for all kinds of elected officials who are currently holding office and those who have held office in the past. Already tonight, House Speaker Lisa Demuth put out a statement clarifying and saying that she was relieved. Dean Phillips, who served for the 3rd Congressional District for several years, also tweeted out that he had been on that list, thanking lawmakers for their efforts. We know people across the state will be relieved that they have apprehended and arrested suspected shooter Vance Belter tonight. And again, we believe it happened about an hour ago in a field not far from that home he owned on Green Isle. We had been watching that scene all day and have video of the massive police presence that was in the Green Isle area since 7 a.m. this morning. They had Bearcats, armored vehicles, and we do know they were also using drones to help search for him. And he was found in a field, as we showed you all the images of what a bucolic area this is and how many areas they had to search from outbuildings like this one. We know they also went door to door to all the property owners in that area and searched their homes as well. It's a population of about 600 people there in Green Isle, and his car was found on Highway 25, not far from his home, about 5 miles from his home at 7 a.m., a car that he'd been using. Authorities believed they found that car parked there along with a hat that he had been wearing. Our Ian Russell has been in that area all afternoon and into the evening and is near that scene where Vance Belter was apprehended tonight. Ian, what are you seeing?
Well, Julie, things have quieted down quite a bit from just the past 10 minutes or so when all of those law enforcement officials were here wrapping up, arresting and taking into custody Vance Belter. Was just up here at a home on the right side of the road here on 200th Street here, just a little bit, maybe a mile or two or so down the road from Belter's Green Isle home here, where they say they found him in a field. Not far, obviously, from that home where we saw so much law enforcement activity kind of throughout the day, coming into that home, searching around and going door to door. As we were kind of driving around this afternoon and into the early part of the evening, we saw sort of convoys of cars, Bearcats and armored vehicles and squad cars going door to door in this neighborhood. Right down the road, 3/4 of a mile to a mile, just asking people and searching their property to see if he was anywhere near there. Clearly, right down the street here in this field directly to my right. As I said, the law enforcement has since moved out in the past 10 minutes or so, where they were celebrating with each other, saying, "Hey man, I love you. Congratulations. Thank you. We got this guy." Just celebrating this arrest of Vance Belter here. As I said, we are not far down the road from where his home is located and where they were searching most of the afternoon and in the early part of today, where they found that black Buick and that cowboy hat that they think is his or I think could be connected. I mean, all these different things is just right down the street from us, maybe a mile or two, less than a 10-minute drive from where we currently are. So clearly not too far from where kind of this all kicked off this morning and lasting into the night here. But as I said, law enforcement, as they were wrapping up, just said they found him in a field. So they weren't able to tell me too many more details past that, but they said he was just right there, just right next to us, right down the street here. So yeah, huge news here for law enforcement as they get him tonight.
Thank you so much, Ian. And so you talked a little bit about the locations there. What brought them out there again was the car, that Buick that he had been believed to be driving, and a cowboy hat that he was wearing on that surveillance video. Just explain where in relation to that was he actually found, and how close is that to his actual house over there? And I mean, obviously we'll find out later if he had been hiding in that field all day, but just kind of paint a picture once again of the location of everything in that area there compared to where he was found.
So direction-wise, if directly behind me is north, the way that I'm facing is south here, so this would be east and then west over my shoulder. This direction over here is that State Highway 25, 311, 301st, and 291, I think were the roads that they were searching there earlier. I believe it was 301st was where they were actually looking at that Buick, where we saw law enforcement moving through fields, moving through groves of trees, looking at things and searching for any sort of evidence. I'd say it's less than 5 miles from where that Buick was found to where we currently are. We are south west of where that area was. This is where Belcher's Green Isle home is, just right down the road, maybe a mile and a half or so, and around a little bit of bend. We're on 200th right now, and it kind of runs into and intersects 341st. So we are not far at all from, one, his home, but two, where they have been searching most of the day. 5 miles, if that, from where they were searching earlier, a mile and a half from his Green Isle home here.
I thought it was so interesting that you saw that reaction from law enforcement, that they were hugging each other. They're so relieved. A very long day for them and a stressful day as well. This wasn't as if they were looking for a missing person. They were looking for someone they believed to be armed and dangerous and not afraid to open fire on police officers. Already we have messages pouring in on social media from lawmakers and others saying thank you to law enforcement, because they have been at it since all of this began transpiring, 2 a.m. the night before last, and especially today, just searching all those fields, searching the woods, searching the outbuildings, and every time they're going into a new location, not knowing what they could be met with. So we're so thankful that this came to a peaceful conclusion tonight. We are understanding that at 10:30, we are anticipating a press conference from officials at the Emergency Operations Center to update us on exactly how they found him. We're hoping they'll give us all of those details. We have our Morgan Wolf live at the Emergency Operations Center now, waiting for that press conference to begin. Morgan?
Yeah, Julie, I got back here just within the last 20 minutes or so, and things are moving right now. We have a crew setting up cameras, and we are just waiting for them to give us the word on who exactly will be coming to speak to us. Earlier today, we did hear from the BCA Superintendent, Drew Evans, who gave us more details on what was happening today and spoke about the search that they had going on in Green Isles. And so we're hoping to learn more information on how they actually took him into custody and the steps that led them there to that position in the field. We have a lot of questions right now at this moment, and so we are here at the command center and we're ready to ask them. Back to you.
All right, Morgan, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'd like to ask the folks in our control room if we can get that picture up again that Sheriff Bob Fletcher tweeted out of his arrest. You can see it obviously looks like he was apprehended in some kind of field. And Lou, you were noting it looks like he's still wearing a dark blue shirt with some sort of coverall over the top.
And it looks very similar to what he was wearing on that surveillance video where he had the creepy mask on. And it looks like he just put this other coat on top of it. It's very similar to what he was wearing when he committed the crimes, allegedly.
You had a chance to look over the criminal complaint, and there were some details there about the Brooklyn Park scene and what they found scattered around outside of that scene.
Yeah, this criminal complaint gives new details actually all the way from the beginning, where the 911 call at 2:05 a.m. came to Champlin Police from the Hoffman residence, and it was their daughter who called 911 to report that her parents had been shot by a man wearing a mask. It goes on to say that when Brooklyn Park Police heard about the shooting of a lawmaker, they thought, and it repeats here, that they thought to go check on the Hortman residence. And the details there have been already reported, but some new details that are in here is that inside his vehicle, they found at least 3 AK-47 assault rifles, a 9mm handgun, as well as a list of names and addresses of other public officials. Now, they then went on to search around the area there, and it says they found the ballistic vest that he had basically taken off and left behind, a disassembled 9mm firearm, the mask he was wearing, and a gold police-style badge. They did checks on the gun purchases and found that he had purchased at least 4 of those firearms that have been recovered.
That's just so chilling. And I want to take a moment and pause and give great kudos to the Brooklyn Park Police for having the presence of mind to say that was a lawmaker. Let's check on the Hortman's house. Sadly, they couldn't save the Hortmans, but they met that gunman.
Yeah, and possibly prevented him from
From
going to the
going
next place.
onto names on that list. We know there are about 70 names on that list of current and former lawmakers, and it's just an absolute miracle that they said, you know, we better go check on Representative Hortman in her home.
And these charges are ready to go so that tomorrow he could be charged in Hennepin County with these murder charges. There would be a grand jury convened to upgrade them to first degree because first degree is premeditated murder and no doubt the facts in here. But the way that it works procedurally is that the second degree is the first thing that they charge. Then a grand jury upgrades it to first degree. And then we'll also look to see if there are federal charges that come as well.
So, and at this point, we know there were lower level federal charges that the U.S. Attorney had been looking into, but those could be upgraded as well. Now that he's in custody, of course, all of this is going to start to play out through the courts. We're incredibly grateful that he's in custody tonight, and this had been a story I know that gripped not only people here in our state, but across the country as well. So kudos to our law enforcement officials. This is the statement that Representative House Speaker Lisa Demuth put out tonight on social media. I'm grateful that this nightmare has come to an end with a suspected murderer captured alive so he can be charged, prosecuted, and punished for the horror he has wrought on our state. Thank you to the brave men and women of local, state, and federal law enforcement who have worked around the clock to ensure that this evil man faces justice. And she is speaking for likely thousands tonight who feel that same way. There again is Vance Belter, the 57-year-old man that has been the subject of a massive nationwide manhunt, really, for the last 2 days. We know that there was fear that he was trying to leave the Twin Cities area. In fact, one of the first press conferences the BCA held with Drew Evans, they said, we believe he's trying to leave the area, and they were concerned about that. So it's interesting that he decided to not only not leave the area, but to be so close to a property that authorities clearly knew that he owned, that farmstead that it looked like in Green Isle. Right after these shootings, that morning, shortly thereafter, there were armored vehicles parked outside that home. So he clearly knew that law enforcement was aware that he owned a property there, and yet here he is tonight, about an hour ago, apprehended only a mile or so from that home.
It's hard to believe that he would be able to make it back there undetected because they searched the home yesterday. We were there yesterday when it had a huge law enforcement presence. And then at 6 or 7 this morning, that vehicle was discovered and the cowboy hat there was no attempt to hide it whatsoever. The car was just pulled off on the side of the road, cowboy hat placed right in front. Clearly the same hat that he was wearing on the surveillance video. And he apparently went from there to just a couple miles to the west toward where his house is. And who knows how long he was just essentially lying there waiting.
Hiding in the woods. You know, we had talked earlier, and there is that Buick earlier today being towed away from the scene. We know it had Minnesota plates and that it was the subject of what they call a BOLO alert, to be on the lookout for, because law enforcement knew that that was a car that he could be driving. Lou, you did some investigative work and found that it was registered to a different person. It's not under his name,
That's
at least.
That's correct. It's another person's name, Minnesota man, and we haven't named him because we don't know if he's connected in any way or why
He had that
Vance
car.
Belter was driving this other man's vehicle. But yeah, it was in another man's name, and throughout this whole thing, they weren't ruling out the possibility that Vance Belter had help. And so this name went out in the Be on the Lookout alert in South Dakota as well. But apparently that vehicle never made it to South Dakota because it was found so close to home.
A couple things we learned today as this investigation was ongoing. We also learned from a press conference with authorities that what has been described as a manifesto really wasn't what you might think of as a typical manifesto. When you hear that word, you think someone has written pages and pages out on a particular political ideology that they feel very strongly about. He said it was more, Drew Evans, the head of the BCA, said it was more like a notebook that had all these names listed of current and former politicians, and also some Planned Parenthood locations and thoughts in there that led them to believe he had very strong opinions on the issue of abortion. We did speak with a roommate in his home in North Minneapolis, which is a place where he rented a room because he did some odd jobs around the Minneapolis area and would crash there a couple times a week. And his roommate said that he didn't talk a lot about politics, that he had no idea that Vance Belter, a man he'd known since 4th grade, was capable of this kind of violence, if in fact he is the shooter, as police believe that he is. So he was shocked. But again, that manifesto that we've heard so much about did not appear to be some long written out ideology on any particular political topic.
One thing that the criminal complaint does add, that he did have addresses for other elected officials. And so it's, you know, with these 70 names, at least other addresses as well of politicians. And, you know, that would be the assumption, is that he planned on making more stops after that one.
Can you speak at all to the federal charges that might be forthcoming and the penalties involved?
Well, so I was in Tucson, Arizona when Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot, and because she was a congresswoman, a federal politician, they were able to charge a special murder charge in federal law for that. That doesn't exactly exist just because the victims in this case were state lawmakers. However, remember the Luigi Mangione case that recently involved the murder of Brian Thompson? They charged a terrorism charge, and they were able to say, because the murder itself was meant to strike fear in others, and so if they want to use something like that, they could apply something like that, and they could seek the death penalty if they choose to do that.
All right, so all those charges, of course, will be forthcoming.